What was going on this weekend? Like, I know you were at some kind of festival or something.
I was in Charleston. Holy Smokes! It's a barbecue festival there. It's a charity for the Ronald McDonald House there, and Hogs for a Cause, which is a barbecue kind of fundraising thing that happens throughout the year, different festivals.
Okay.
3,000 people.
Wow.
On the old Navy Yard in Charleston, Riverfront Park.
Good views?
Yeah, great views. Lots of shipping containers with big giant shipping container ships passing by.
Cool.
But I do that every year. This is the fourth one. Get to see a lot of my friends from all over the country come out and cook barbecue for a good cause and feed a lot of people down there.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Like, it seems like in the barbecue world, which I'm not in at all, but it seems like there's a lot of camaraderie. Is that the case?
I mean, there's definitely competition, but
Sure.
we're all. I mean, there's definitely groups of people that are little cliques and have lots of friends out there, and we're all in it together. You know, we deal with the same struggles and the same issues, and
somebody forgets something, you help them out. And
or just in life or just in business, we're all doing the same thing, feeding people barbecue. Things catch on fire, or
right.
People quit, things change, COVID happens, we're all kind of dealing with it and can have conversations about all that stuff, but it's a pretty tight group of folks and happy to be a part of it.
Very cool. So do you look forward to those kinds of events? Like, are they more life-giving or are they more draining? Is it a mixture?
Yeah, I would say it's a mixture. It's the last one of the year for me. The last festival I had September, October up into this weekend was almost something every weekend going on, either out of town or having an event for Asheville, or a lot of traveling happens in the fall. Summertime has a good bit of them also, but it's the last one of the year for me, so it's
cool.
But I do enjoy them.
What time do you have to be up for something like that?
It depends on the event. This one started at 11 in the morning. Some of them start in the afternoon, so it depends on what you're cooking. I had mussels, so I didn't have a long overnight cook, but there were guys there cooking hogs that were up all night long. So it really just depends on the event and what you're cooking.
You and I had a brief conversation one night where I saw that the way that you're cooking hog here is the way that I grew up doing it. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about your setup that's out there now, and maybe like when did you start cooking hog like that?
It's just a center block pit with rebar and some fencing wire and some tin roofing for the cover. I grew up here in Florence, and my dad and my grandfather and uncle had a welding shop called Moss Welding on Darlington Street.
Cool.
And they cooked hogs every year for Christmas with pits that they made at their shop. So some of my earliest childhood memories of food was cooking hogs around Christmas time, hanging out with the men, the women, hanging out all night long, cooking a hog, having it ready for the next day. Some of my oldest memories, and that's really, I think, why I got into cooking barbecue for a living. But we used metal pits, old propane tanks, and then over the years, when I started thinking about doing barbecue for a living, my first catering outside of, here's a hog, I'm under this brand, myself cooking barbecue. I didn't have a pit of my own, so it's easy, cheap to buy center block pits. I think it was like $100 back then. I could buy a mobile block pit with all the tools that I needed. It's gone up a little more now, all the material, building costs, but you can get a block pit fairly cheap and build it and then take it down and stack it up against the wall until next time. So it's a very heavy mobile pit, but you can kind of take it anywhere you want. I set that one up out there to cook a hog, and I left it up just to remind myself of it and have some people be able to look at it and ask questions about it. But we will have something similar to that outside when we complete our smokehouse outside.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into that. It's funny you said that you guys did the whole hog on a cinder block pit every Christmas. We did it every Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah.
So like usually the either Thanksgiving night or the Friday night after, we would start at 6-7 o'clock at night or whatever and go all night till the next day. Generally we do it Friday so it would be ready for the Carolina Clemson game.
Oh, there you go.
And it's like my earliest childhood memories around food too. Like we would camp out at night, like me and my cousins, and like just hang around. And then, you know, as it gets closer, you start picking the pig a little bit, and it's same as you, one of my most fondest like early cooking memories. I love it so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned that, you know, you can put together a pit even now using cinder blocks. I would imagine a couple $100. It's not that crazy, and it's also a little scrappy. It's a little, I think of it as being like a little ingenuitive. Like you're really making a lot with a little. Is that the spirit of barbecue as well? It seems connected in some way like that.
Yeah, I think so. Take a big pig, it feeds a lot of people, or if you can get a chicken, I mean, you can cook barbecue any way you want,
right,
with as little or as expensive as ingredients as you want. Whole hog costs a lot of money, but it feeds a lot of people, and a brisket costs a decent amount of money for what it is. Doesn't feed quite as many people, but I hope that answers your question.
No, it does. It does. Even like one of my favorite things to do is like get a Boston butt with a buddy and just smoke that, and if you're, you know, a couple families, you can eat off of it for a couple days.
Yeah,
you know?
it'll feed some family members for sure.
Absolutely. Let's see here. When you mentioned getting your start under your name and going out and starting a barbecue, what year was that? How long ago?
Well, I was cooking barbecue up in Asheville at a place called the Admiral, just as like a little side thing. We were more of a fine dining restaurant there.
Okay.
And I was kind of coming towards an end of that part of my career, I think. Just getting a little burnout of doing the fine dining stuff, and felt a draw from the barbecue side of my family and life. I was hearing a lot of people ask where barbecue was up in Asheville, thinking that North Carolina was a barbecue state, but there wasn't a whole lot of regional or long-standing barbecue joints in Asheville at the time, and I decided to start pursuing that. That was in probably 2012, 2011. Okay. We started doing some barbecuing on a Saturday here and there, just to like have a kind of a block party thing, and I decided to open a barbecue place, I think in 2012, and it took me until 2015 is when I finally got Buxton open. It took a couple years to sign a lease and to build out. It was in a pretty giant warehouse.
Dude, it was beautiful.
It was,
absolutely.
Cold vanilla shell is what they called it, so it took like 2 years of renovations and permitting and roadblocks and city issues, but it took about 3 years. I was just kind of hustling out there, doing it on my own, and doing some pop-ups and special events, and started doing a little bit of the festival work.
When you were in that phase, the building phase, which you're kind of in now.
Yeah.
It's funny how that's like
full circle.
Yeah. How do you navigate that? It feels to me, from my perspective, like sometimes growth is really, really fast. Like things are moving really quick.
Oh, yeah.
And it can almost get a little overwhelming, like you're caught up in this big thing that's happening. Then other times it feels like it's moving slow. You're waiting on permits. You're having to do all these things. And it feels kind of just like this, like up and down. It can almost drive you mad if you're not, being careful with it. How do you navigate that? Because I feel like you've had a lot of that in the last 10 years, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right on with all that. I mean, it definitely has long periods of waiting and the days turn into weeks and months and years, and it's definitely can take an effect on your mental state, I guess.
Yeah.
I've always thought that I've had maybe just things in life, but I've got a pretty good patience. My patience is probably more, I have more patience than most people, or I can have
Yeah.
patience, and maybe that's just out of experience in life that I've learned to just not get so caught up in like what I can't control. And,
Absolutely.
and I can see pretty far into the future. Like, yeah, I can wait. I don't mind waiting, you know. It sucks sometimes to have to wait, but, you know, things happen for a reason. That's how I kind of feel. And
Yeah.
just try to stay sane through it all
Right.
the best I can. But, yeah, the waiting game can be tough sometimes. But as I said, I've done it a few times now. Had to wait on a lot of things, or signed a lease on a spot and it fell through, and then having to start all over again, and the highs and the lows are
Yeah.
literally like a wave or a roller coaster.
Absolutely.
Even today, there's always a slight, you know, the anxiety in the back is like, hey, this isn't gonna happen. Like, something's gonna happen today to slow it down. Or
Right.
even as we're building the pit house outside, I'm still like, okay, what's going to happen now before we really get it built? You know, what's going to hold us back this time or slow us down? And I'm just trying to stay positive that that's not going to happen this time. But
Yeah.
there's always that like fear or worry that
Yeah.
we will get slowed down, or hopefully January will be cooking, but you never know.
You can just tell you do have a bit of a, your disposition is a little more relaxed, I feel like, than a lot of people. I've noticed that about you. Even whenever it's crazy in here, you're generally pretty level-headed and cool. The patience is tough for me.
Yeah.
I'm learning and I'm getting better at it, but
Yeah.
it can definitely be a trip. But like you said, it's like this wave, and it kind of feels to me like all you can do is ride it.
Yeah.
And it even feels like the only thing that maybe we have is that choice of how we're gonna ride it. Are we gonna succumb to that voice in the back, the fear that's talking, or are we gonna maybe have a little bit more of a positive and focused outlook? Because things are inevitably gonna come up. I can look at this Pro Tool session, and at one point, I'm sure when doing a podcast, it's gonna crash.
Right.
Like, it's just it's a computer. It happens. But yeah, it does seem like the way you're saying it, trying to keep that positive outlook and just focus on whatever the long-term vision is, knowing that it might not look the way you think it's going to look, but maybe that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't regret much of anything that happened to me in my life. I try to like stay that thought process so I don't get worried about what could have happened or what should have happened. Like, just try to make the best of what is happening currently, and focus on, like you said, what the income goal is, and hopefully it all works out for the best. And I'm got a lot of patience, but I'm also like super. I know I'm a hard worker, and I can grind it out. And I think that's another thing that maybe not everybody has or doesn't know they have inside of them.
Right.
Whatever it takes, you know.
Yeah.
There's no quit.
Whatever the work requires is the motto that I go with these days. It's like, I don't want to work a 12-hour day, 5 days in a row, and, you know, have to take care of all this stuff on my weekend. But if it's what the work requires, it seems like I have the ability to do it.
Yeah.
It's not like disregard for rest or anything like that, or neglecting family. It's just more like sometimes that's the season that you're in, and it feels like if you have a calm and clear mind, you can tell when's the time for that like diligent hard work, and when's the time to just like sit back and be patient and wait for things to come to you. It feels like that's a rhythm that shows up, and I'm trying to tune into it. You know?
Well, good luck.
Hey, back at you.
Yeah.
Where do you feel like this patience or this mindset comes from? Is it your experience? Is it something you learned from a family member?
I would say experience. Most of my family, maybe not most, definitely some of my
close family don't have a lot of patience, and maybe that's where some of it came from. Just seeing how worked up they get or upset they get about outcomes in life. I don't know where I got it from, other than probably is a lot of experience, things that have happened to me or things that have happened in life that are out of my control, or things, as I said, definitely had a lot of almost with restaurants or buildings that this close to happening, and I could have just gave up and quit. And
Absolutely.
No, we're going to keep going forward, and it always seems to kind of work out somehow. It takes years or multiple years or failures and then new things, but try to just keep going.
I like that. Just like observing, it feels like an observation of the good and the bad, meaning you mentioned like seeing certain people who maybe have a certain mindset that keeps them from achieving those kinds of things. There's this like passage I like to read from all over in the Tao Te Ching, like an ancient Chinese book of wisdom essentially, and it says a good student is the teacher of a bad one, and a bad student is the lesson to a good one. Brings forth this idea that even if the people around you are maybe not making the best decisions, you can learn from that, and almost like you've done, like do the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely.
What had you go to Asheville?
Well, I was in Columbia. I moved to Columbia in 2000 with a friend of mine from Florence. He went to USC, but he went to Francis Marion first and then transferred to USC, and he needed a roommate and was like, hey, you want to move to Columbia? And I was like, yeah, let's get out of Florence.
Cool.
I was working at Chick-fil-A at the time.
The one over by the mall?
Yeah, I worked at all the Chick-fil-A's here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I worked at Chick-fil-A for 8 years. I started at the original one inside the mall that was beside Victoria's Secret.
Oh, right.
And then I never worked at the one that's in the food court.
Right.
That one came after I moved, but I worked at the double drive-through, the original one. There used to be one at Darlington Tech that made all the sandwiches for the high schools. I did that, and the one out by Walmart, out in South Florence.
Yeah.
I helped open that one also. But
cool.
I transferred Chick-fil-A. I got a job at Chick-fil-A in Columbia. That was real easy. So it was like, yeah, let's move to Columbia. I lived there for 5 years, and I opened a place called The Wig with a friend of mine, and he was the bartender. I was the chef.
Nice.
And we were kind of just tired of Columbia, ready to do something different. We had toyed around with moving to Asheville, and then we decided to move to Philly for some reason.
Oh, cool.
But we were like, let's move to Philadelphia, and it was nice. It was kind of centrally located, DC, Baltimore, New York.
Yeah.
Lots of like day trips.
Yeah.
And it was very affordable. In 2005 is when that was. And then my roommate that I moved up there with from Columbia decided to move to Asheville anyway, and found a spot that was for rent, an old bar, and talked me into moving to Asheville to help him open that restaurant. It was called it was called the Admiral.
The Admiral.
And I did that for 6 years, and that was kind of how I got to Asheville.
Nice.
I got a James Beard nomination there, like as I was working out a 3-month notice. I got it 2 weeks before I left.
Wow.
And it was kind of weird for both parties. Neither one of us really got to like capitalize on that. Like,
yeah.
It was like, oh wow, I'm leaving, he's leaving, so we didn't really like even acknowledge it or celebrate it. It was more just like, well. But I was leaving the Admiral to work on opening a barbecue place. That was I did that for 6 years.
That was Buxton Hall at that point, yeah.
Yeah, I tried to open it. It was going to be called Buxton Hill originally. We had a different location. It was an old veterinarian. It was the first female veterinarian clinic in North Carolina.
Cool.
It's called the Dog House, but it was right across the street
from Buxton and worked on that for like a year, and then it kind of all fell apart at the end. And
You mean right across the street from where it ended up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well I know that space because.
Well, it was more like caddy cornered.
Okay.
It was a building, and we bought it, and the price of the purchase, and then the build out, and all of the stuff they kept telling us we had to do was approaching like $1 million, and we finally were like, we can't do this, so we sold the building. And
Yeah.
my partner at the time was the same one who owned the wig, and we decided not to go forward. And I was like, what am I going to do now? And my partner that ended up opening Buxton with me heard about me not doing it anymore and was like,
Right.
let me help you do this. So
Cool.
that's how Buxton, kind of like Buxton Hall proper, got rolling. And we had looked at the building that we moved into with the previous partner, so I knew about the space.
Yeah.
And we ended up going into that spot.
Very nice. Buxton was a amazing place, man.
Yeah, it sure was.
I heard about it from my wife. I think the first time maybe we went, because you said you opened in 2015.
Yep.
So she went to school in Asheville when we were first dating, but that would have been a couple years earlier. I feel like she heard it on Stu Helms. Is that the guy's name that has the podcast?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, we did a lot of promoting, and it took us like 2 years to get open. So there was a lot of like
Yeah.
years of buzz and people talking about it. So there was the anticipation for us to open, at least locally, was
Yeah.
pretty strong. And we did a lot of pop-ups and cooking at breweries and different things just to hustle and
Yeah.
get the name out there. So I'm sure she heard of it.
I think that's what it was, and I feel like we went for the first time on our honeymoon, and it was like,
Nice.
it's a great spot, man. We went, as anytime we were in Nashville, we would go. And I also love Vortex.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's solid donuts, real good coffee.
Mhm.
So we would start almost, anytime we were in Nashville, we would almost always start our morning at Vortex, and it would not be uncommon to like, mosey on over to Buxton Hall for lunch.
Yeah, well,
And
we had that relationship. A lot of people had that like same. Let's just stay on the South Slope and have beer and breakfast, and
Yeah.
we'd have some folks that would come for lunch and come back for dinner.
Yeah.
Definitely had that.
There's something about that. Like, even me, as I plan out, like you said, like I see far out, and like I think of something not dissimilar from that, having a coffee set up, maybe even in one space, and having someone come in the morning and get their coffee and do their work, and then it's like, oh, let me go here for lunch, and you do that, and then go back to and you just kind of spend your day there. It feels nice to me. I like whenever I'm in those kinds of situations. It's hard to find around here,
Yeah.
but I know it exists in other places, so maybe one day something like that here. I don't know,
one
but
day, for sure.
but I love that vibe and that atmosphere, and being able to like, I remember the last time I went to Buxton Hall, randomly, me, my wife, but also my cousin and his wife were in Nashville at the same time. We didn't know. And then we met up at Vortex and went to Buxton, and then we walked downtown, and it was just great. It was like one of the best days I ever spent there, because you're just going from place to place. It's fun.
Yeah. I lived on the block. There was an apartment building literally right beside Buxton. I lived there
Cool.
for years. It was
Dude.
It's a lot of fun, but a lot of like, oh, why am I at the restaurant at 9 o'clock getting coffee just to get coffee? Or
Yeah.
then I get sucked in. It was
Right.
a lot of work. I think I counted was like 30 seconds of me running from the back door to my front door in the rain, because I just wanted to count how long it took me to get to work. And really close.
Wow.
I do miss some of that.
I'm about to say that had to be tough to leave, just because I have such a fond memory of that location. And I mean, I know I'm going back, but it feels hard to leave. That's a cool spot.
It was nice early on when the South Slope wasn't so busy.
Yeah.
And then it started a lot of construction happening.
Dude, yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was the beep, beep,
All the
beep
time,
in
yeah.
like 7 in the morning. Been cooking hogs all night, trying to go to sleep, and they announced that they were breaking ground on this giant, massive, like development across the street from us. And I had just lived through like an apartment being built beside us, and I was like, I can't do this.
I get
again.
that.
So we decided to leave and move into a quiet neighborhood with lots of bears. It was fun. But yeah, I do have fond memories of Buxton. It was a good time of my life.
Great.
It was a basement that most people didn't know, but it was underneath Buxton was the same amount of space.
Really?
It was a basement level that was the same floor print of the upstairs.
Wow.
Yeah, that was...
What was there?
My office. We did all of our bakery down there.
Okay.
A lot of storage, all of our refrigeration, manager offices, mostly just storage and like behind the scenes stuff.
Very cool.
We did do a couple of we did this series of pop-up dinners with a guy named Mike Moore called Blind Pig. He still does some of those out of Raleigh in North Carolina, but we did a Harry Nilsson themed pop-up dinner in the basement, which was pretty trippy. Had the lights like wild and set up tables in between like the prep kitchens, and had a DJ
awesome.
playing music down there. It was
It's like a full immersive experience of all your senses.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Super fun.
I like it. Well, I know you got some meat over there. Do you want to go check on it?
Yeah,
Let's see that.
absolutely.
We head outside. We dodge both construction equipment and workers who are building the smokehouse. Elliott loads wood in, tends the fire. You can tell it's not his first rodeo. The smell is intoxicating. Not just the wood, but the meat as well. He opens it up. It looks perfect. I see that pastor, and I'm ready for Tuesday. That said, I'm gonna have to practice some patience, something you learn if you spend any time smoking meat. So, I admire what's here, but it's not long before we're back into the conversation. Things are certainly smelling good out there.
Yeah, getting there.
When you're cooking, do you consider it like, meaning, is it something that's on your mind that it's a creative thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of like interest and passions in life.
Yeah.
I would say art was my first like passion.
Cool.
I took art like every year through school, first through 12th grade.
Wow.
I always kind of wanted to be an artist growing up as a kid, and then I realized like, well, I got to make money to live. So my dad was a welder, and he dabbled in the like artistic side of welding with
cool.
Made like ornamental handrails and gates, and
Wow.
he was a pretty good drawer, and kind of got inspired, I think, a little bit from him. And then I had really good art teachers in elementary school. Middle school was okay, but I really liked high school art class. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I didn't really know what I wanted to do for a living. Early on, I got a job at Chick-fil-A because I had friends that worked there, and it was easy. And then I found that job to be fairly easy and kind of fun, working at the mall and having my coworkers be friends I went to school with. And then they kind of all left, and then I was still there, and I kind of started to like not really like the job. It was more of just like a grind and like the same thing every day. And I learned a lot about how to work in kitchens and manage people and cook, for high volume. And then I moved back to Florence for like maybe a year in the early 2000s to save up to move to Philadelphia.
Right.
And most of my friends had left. And back then, Food Network was more of educational programming than I think like what it is today, more reality based.
Right.
And I just watched Food Network like constantly and learned a lot about cooking. And then I found that I really enjoyed like the creativity part of it, like having a kind of like an encyclopedia of knowledge about what works in your head with food, and then doing your own thing with it. I never was really like a cookbook guy. Like I would look at cookbooks and recipes and then just wanted to do my own like version of it. And then when I started cooking, professionally at the Wig, that was my first non-fast food restaurant job. And then especially at the Admiral, it was an open kitchen there, so I got to see, everyone eat the food and not eat the food, and it's it's kind of like instant gratification when somebody, you can tell that they're enjoying their food without them saying anything. You can just see it on their face, or wow, you just cleaned your plate, you must have liked that, or you were just really hungry. But I found that I got a lot out of gratification from that, and I think most artists or artistic people are looking for gratification for their work. Musicians, they want people to enjoy their stuff, or artists want to sell their paintings, and they get that like sense of like gratification from it, and I got that kind of instantly through cooking food.
Right.
So I think that answers your question. I definitely find, artistic things and cooking and being creative is the part that I think I enjoy the most.
Yeah.
And I know that I try to keep that in my head when I do have employees that work for me, knowing that they are probably feeling the same way cooking my food. Same every day. It gets monotonous and annoying. So I do try to keep that in my mind of like letting them have some creativity in the menu or family meals, or because I know that gets them through the day or the work week, unexpectedly. Here, come up with a sauce or come up with a special, and really helps them probably get through the day, or
absolutely
helps scratch that creative bug that they've got too.
It feels like we all have it.
Yeah.
And I like that you're being mindful of that in terms of the people that are working for you. Just using that empathy of like, I remember whenever that was happening. 'Cause we've all worked those jobs where it's like you feel like you're almost coming in and servicing someone else's dream or something.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it's really gratifying whenever, as an employee, that someone is thinking of you as well and trying to put something into you, even if you're not going to stay there forever or whatever it is, but allow you to have just a little bit of, I know I can think of the times where I worked a job where I felt like I had a little bit of ownership, at least in my part of what I was doing.
Sure.
And it feels great.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned art and growing up doing that, which sounds like you grew up to be an artist as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But what were you mainly doing then? Like, was it just drawing, or was it painting, or were you doing more abstract, more realism? Like, what did it look like?
I drew a lot in school. During just like class, I drew a lot. Pen and ink. And
were you into comic books at all, or?
Still am into comic books.
Me too.
Yeah,
cool.
I've got a pretty extensive comic book collection.
Nice.
Unfortunately.
What's some of your favorites?
I'm a big Spider-Man guy. I always have been.
Are you reading the current Hickman run, Ultimate Spider-Man?
Oh yeah.
Isn't it great?
Yeah, I've got all of those. I've got the original Ultimate Spider-Man, the full run.
Nice.
Spider-Man 29, the original first run.
Yeah.
I've got a Spider-Man is there, and X-Men kind of was, a kid of the 80s.
Yeah.
X-Men were super popular, and I collect for fun and also for, like, hopefully one day these
little investment here.
Let me take a vacation when I'm older, or I do like the collecting for speculation and for all of that, but also the art. But drawing a lot. And then because I took art class for 12 years of my life, I learned a lot of like things, we did some pottery when I was younger. My dad being a welder, I definitely have made my fair share of like sculptures out of metal, like larger than life-size sculptures, like really big sculptures. Painting is something that I enjoy. I've definitely had phases of my life where I did a lot of like pretty large scale acrylic paintings.
Oh, really? Cool.
Oil is something that I've never really dabbled too much in oil painting. I understand it, but it's also just super messy and like destroys everything. Like if you get it on your clothes, it's there forever. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I guess
my wife kind of hates all of that part of it, but I'm still into art. I still do art. I had an art show right before I moved to Florence in Asheville at Harvest Records. screen
Oh, yeah, I've
printing.
been
There
there.
was some screen printing involved with that, photography involved with that, and watercolor is something I kind of got into the past probably 4 years of my
Nice.
life. I learned a little bit of it in school, and then just kind of like, for whatever reason, turned my nose up to it. But I found a lot of
coming
joy
back.
in watercolor the past few years.
It feels very calming to me. I don't know what it is. There's an artist here in Florence. Her name is Ushi Jeffcoat that does beautiful watercolor work.
Oh,
I'll show you a
cool.
picture of some of her stuff, but
That's awesome.
yeah, there's definitely something to the watercolor thing to me that's a little bit like, I mean, I don't do it, but just when I'm looking at it, it's very relaxing. Is that what you kind of get out of it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I just enjoy the fine detail that you can do with the colors and layering, and I like that it's a paste and you add water to it, and you've got this pigment color that you
Yeah.
can stain paper with.
Yeah.
It's an interesting medium.
Absolutely.
I've find a lot of joy in like painting at the beach and like just grabbing some salt water from the ocean and using that as like my water for the watercolors.
Oh, cool.
River water, just like kind of just finding being
In
unprepared,
nature. Yeah,
unprepared.
absolutely,
and
like-
making the best of what you can find out there.
That feels so in line with the barbecue tradition. Like as I was setting up today, I was like, all right, I'm not bringing the chairs. I'm not bringing the stuff for it's always like, what am I going to find that I can use?
Right.
And it feels like, to bring it back to barbecue for a sec, feels like back in the day when they would dig the pits into the ground and, you just kind of work with what you got. It's like, there's some
Sure.
hogs around. Let's just cook with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's something about this, like, sort of just going into something very open, understanding that you don't have everything that you need, but like, I need some water and there's a river, so I'll use that.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
There's something really
Same.
cool about that.
Yeah, well, thanks. I like that mindset also.
Yeah, because like you said, when you're going to go down the road of whatever it is you're trying to make, it could be a restaurant or a podcast or whatever, you don't have everything you need to get to the end of that road.
Right.
If you wait until you have that, you'll never even start, it
Never.
seems like. And so it kind of feels like you have to operate with this like blind faith that the things that you need are going to show up. Almost like the way I like to think about it now is like, maybe there's a reason why I have this idea. Like maybe this thing really needs to exist, and it just needs me to like say, okay, I'm gonna do it. I don't know how it's gonna happen, but I'm gonna do it.
Sure.
It feels like that gets rewarded by something. I don't know, but it
Yeah.
feels like it.
Absolutely.
And when you look back, hearing your story, to me it seems obvious. It's like, yeah, something was pulling you down this trail and you kept going and it worked. So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool.
Absolutely.
The spot you're doing now, looking at the sign now, it's really cool.
Well, thank you.
Elliott's. In music, generally, when an artist does a self-titled album, it's very personal. They feel like this is the thing that I've been, trying to work towards. I don't want to project too much, but is there any of that? And why now call it Elliott's versus Buxton Hall or The Wig or whatever?
We didn't struggle, but we definitely thought about some names for this spot, and my mom has always kind of wanted me to call something my name just because she's my mom, and I was almost close to opening a place in Asheville, and it was going to be called Moss and More.
Oh,
That's
cool.
my mom's maiden name and my last name.
I like that.
Both which families were very inspirational in my barbecue journey, and I still may do that project one day, but my partner Tim actually suggested Elliott's, and I was like, well, I mean, I can't really say no to that.
It sounds like you're getting a sign,
I think it
yeah.
works. I know my mom would really like it, and that's basically where that came from. But
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever had the thought of calling something Elliott's before, but
Yeah.
it wasn't a hard sell for me to call it Elliott's. But yeah, that's where the name came from. Definitely is like a homecoming for me.
Right.
I do have a lot of family and friends still in Florence in the
Yeah.
area, and
yeah, we're gonna do some food here, similar to what we were doing at Buxton. This is whole hog country, so we're definitely gonna do some hogs, and barbecue will be a big part of it. I've learned a lot from my time at Buxton. Learned things that I won't do again, or things that I wish I would have done there, are kind of like some of the inspirations here. We did barbecue there at Buxton 7 days a week, lunch and dinner.
Right.
Like whole hogs 24/7, and it was a lot. I don't know if we'll do that here. It's kind of like maybe eventually, but we're going to start out with just doing it on the weekends. And use the smoker for other fun things where I don't have to be here 24/7 or be responsible for someone being here literally all week long. It took a big toll on my this person can't work tonight. I guess I've got to go cook the hogs on a Tuesday night when I'd been there all day long. There was many of those, like, oh wow, now I've got to kick it into like 6th gear when I'm already worn out. So
absolutely.
But I always say never. You never know what we'll end up morphing into or turning into over the years.
It's an interesting idea. I'm gonna check Pro Tools one quick second because something popped up. Thought we were good, and we are. I just wanted to verify. It turning into something is an interesting idea because, like, I feel like in the West, we think of art and creativity as like, you make something. It doesn't exist, and you made it. Typically, like, Eastern views are something already exists, you're merely uncovering it. Almost like it's easy to think of it in like a sculpture, that it's happening like that. And if you take that approach of like the thing already exists, you're just uncovering it, it seems to suggest this idea of like the thing kind of wants to be what the thing wants to be, and that the best thing you can do is kind of like be in service of that. That's what I think of when I hear you say that. Do you feel like sometimes whenever maybe it's a restaurant or your art that you're working on, does it sometimes feel like, hey, it's trying to go this way and I thought it was going to go that way, but I'm going to honor what it seems like it wants to be? Is that something you run into?
Yeah, absolutely. I think naturally, for sure. I try not to get caught up on like, this is what this is going to be.
Right.
Stuff happens, pandemics, wars, everything happens, and I can't control really any of that. And if you get caught up on like, this is going to be this, that's how a lot of places go out of business, or things don't work out because people are stubborn in their like their ego or whatever it is makes them not be able to shift or pivot. Pivot is a good word I like to use.
I was going to say, it sounds like the pivot.
Yeah, and I have ideas of what Elliott's is going to be, but ultimately our customers are going to have a big influence on that. Like, what do they want? You have to give the people what they want in a way, I think, to keep them coming. You can manipulate what you're giving them to feed your desires more than theirs, but we'll see what we become, and I hope that we're here for a really long time, and things have to change to stay fresh, and the world changes, people's likes and desires changes. The folks that live in Florence, the kind of people that live here will change over the years, I'm sure. People come and go, and transplants will come here, or kids that are 5 and 6 will be 10 and 12 and 20, and people are always be coming in and looking for something, and I do have my pulse on like trends and what's happening in the world, and you got to change, as I said, I don't want to do barbecue 7 days a week, but we might one day be doing barbecue 7 days a week, and
if it becomes a barbecue mecca, you almost have to.
I won't say no to that. Can try to postpone it for as long as I can, and we'll just see what happens. But I like looking at things of
what they become, more of like what I think they will, because it always ends up different than,
it seems like the way to be.
Yeah.
It does. You mentioned, understandably, because I see how much work goes into it, not being able to be the guy at the pit, 7 days a week, 24/7 basically. But that if that ever was a thing that needed to happen, meaning seems like, everybody's coming in, everybody wants barbecue Monday through Sunday, you would need somebody to come in and almost be a number two type guy. In the barbecue world, how important is the idea of like apprenticeship and passing on what you know to someone who's looking to study the craft?
Oh, it's super important. You can't do it alone. You got to have a team, and you got to have a team that cares and wants to create the best barbecue that we can. And I'm constantly looking for those people. Even if I have one, I got to have 2 or 3 or 4 at least. Maybe in the background, or folks that are coming up, because people do have their own passions and wants and needs in life. You never know, they have to move out of state because of this or that, and if you're not prepared for someone else to kind of come in and help out, then that's when things get really bad and you work yourself to death.
It's like you're constantly, the thing I've heard people say is like constantly replicate yourself, like always be looking to bring up the next class of folks who are within this thing that you're doing. And I know for me, I'm like you. I've got a lot of passions and a lot of things I'm interested in. And it kind of seems like there's a lot of people like that. And surely one of them is going to be into, oh man, let me learn under this like barbecue pit master. Let me make this something that I'm doing. Like it feels very enticing. Like it's an exciting thing. I like whenever I'm outside cooking, smoked hog, whatever it is. And so it feels like you'll definitely get those people to come to you.
Yeah, that's the plan. And, back to the events that we do, once I get a crew that is trained and can like hold it down when I'm not here, and I do events, and we have a couple of folks that are able to hold it down, and one of the reasons why I do the offsite events and the festivals is that so I can bring folks along and experience that, and
bring them with you to the festivals and things.
Then they meet. That's when it really like goes to the next level for them, because then they get to meet a lot of folks that are like them, like learning and working in the barbecue industry. And there's owners and pit masters, and then there's guys that are under them, and they have their own little clique of like, hey, they have the same issues, like, my boss is drunk all the time, or there he is.
Not Elliott.
No, but they have their own set of similarities and things that they deal with, not on like the ownership level, but of the grind is still there, and they have their own like carrying wood or pit fires or the power goes out. What do you do now? They all have those stories.
And taking them and having them rubbing shoulders with those who are like them and at the level, but even like you said, like there's like some great guys that are at these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so being able to talk with one, I imagine it's a pretty open type of, it just feels that way from outside looking in.
Sure.
I imagine it's very open, that you could walk up to the number one guy and he probably would have a word for you that would help you along.
Absolutely.
So I like the idea that you're already considering like, man, I'm ready to take these people to this, because we all have those things where it's like, yo, let me come open your world up a little bit. And like that, this feels like one of those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I do the events. Literally, is just so I can bring people along and help them be inspired with their current job and give them something to look forward to. It's a perk of, hey, you work with me long enough, you're gonna get to come to one of these events. And,
that's cool.
I've been to Australia to cook barbecue, and I took my general manager with me. We both got to spend 2 weeks in Australia.
Wow. What was that like?
It was amazing, I came back and my wife was so tired of me talking about Australia. She's like, I've heard enough, shut up. It's a different place out there. First time I left the States, the only time I've left the States is just to go to Australia.
It's got to be a pretty wild transition, because like I'm assuming, just, I've never been there, I don't know, but feel like it's like the animal life and stuff is wild there. Like,
yeah, I got to see kangaroos and little kangaroos and koala bears.
Wow.
I could talk about Australia all day long.
And is it like, when you say that, it's not like you went to a zoo.
I did go to a zoo.
Oh, but you did go to a zoo.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, does this stuff exist just naturally out?
Oh, yeah.
And you see
certain
that too?
parts. I didn't see any wild kangaroo.
Okay,
I was in
okay.
Melbourne. And,
in the city, yeah.
The Anglesey, which is a beach town a couple hours south of Melbourne, but I there's definitely the wild stuff there. I didn't get to see any of the like wild stuff, but we went to some nature preserves where
cool.
they're kind of living in their own natural environments.
Yeah. I feel like Melbourne has a killer coffee scene.
It was, and I actually wasn't drinking coffee. I took like a 3-year break from caffeine.
Oh.
When I was in Australia, I was like, my GM there, Kyle, was like loving it. There's literally coffee shops, like every other storefront is a coffee cafe is what they call them. They all have food. They all have really killer coffee, and I was just like, I didn't drink any of it, but hindsight, I wish I would have a little.
Yeah, you're back on it now, though.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I am back on it. I drank a lot of it, and then I quit. Just like I got sick one time, and I just cut out like all of my like I was just drinking water and eating, and then coffee was the one thing I felt like maybe it was keeping me up at night. And I was, just like I didn't have a good relationship with coffee.
I have to cut it off, man.
Yeah.
Like, because I mean, I've had 1 cup today, and for me, like, coffee is, it's one of those things that we talk about. Like, it's just like super into it, and I could drink it all day.
Sure.
But I know that I can't drink it all day.
Right.
And especially, like, for me, like, 4 p.m. is the absolute cutoff. I like to be in bed by 10, and, like, luckily, I feel like my body does process caffeine pretty quick.
Same.
So I'm grateful for that I can have a cold brew at 4 o'clock, and I get a bump, and then at 10 I'm ready for bed, and I'll sleep till 6. But it does feel like, you know, I do have to watch it. Because if I'm drinking it at 8 o'clock, I'm going to be up till 1 or 2.
Sure.
But is coffee like something that when you can get the good stuff, you're excited about it?
Yeah, I mean, I it's more of a money thing, you know. I definitely like, I drink a lot of instant coffee. I drink a lot of good coffee. I didn't drink coffee for a long time, and I was traveling back from Miami with the van and a smoker pulling behind it, and I was like, that's when I was like, I can't make this trip, I need something, and I broke it on gas station coffee.
What's that first kick like when you come back?
Was pretty good. I was like, woo.
That's how I was. I took about a month off a couple years ago, and when I came back, I remember I had my first, I do like a pour over every morning. I did my first pour over, and this is like the only time in 10 plus years that I ever took a break. And I just love the experience of making it. It's very, you know, grounding. But I had that first cup, and I remember going to get my hair cut, and I was in the chair, like just convulsing, essentially. I was telling my barber, I was like, listen, man, I'm sorry. I just had my first cup, and I'm literally like, I'm seeing colors I don't normally see. Like, it really put me to the moon, which was fun, I guess. Maybe we can check the meat and do a little. I just brought the kegerator, man, because the nitro is so much better when it's fresh out. Oh, cool. So we can get some coffee and check this meat.
Sounds great.
Cool, let's do it. Is bringing a kegerator to a podcast recording a little bit extra? Perhaps, but I'm not really a man of half measures. As someone who has many interests like myself, I'm sure Elliott understands. Pull the nitro, nice and creamy. It cascades, and it looks amazing. After all, you do eat and drink with your eyes first. Now that the cold brew is ready, we head back to the last part of our conversation. If you're watching the video, it gets a little dark. It'll get better. You wrote a book.
Yep.
I have the book because I picked it up. I was at Buxton eating your barbecue, and at the time I find that I get into these like almost like phases where it's like I want to get really into this, And at the time, I was in like I want to get into smoking meat phase, but I never got the smoker or never built the pit, so I haven't read the book yet, but I will, and I'm going to.
Sure.
But what was that like? Writing a book.
It was one of the hardest things I've ever done.
It's real hard.
Yeah, we. I got an opportunity to do a do-it-yourself smoking cookbook. Was the kind of pitch that someone sold me and the publisher on.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I can probably do that. I had like a year while I was waiting on Buxton to open, so I was like, yeah, I got plenty of free time. I got to write recipes anyway.
Cool.
For the restaurant. I already had a good bit of the recipes kind of already like in my noggin and all, and I would say one of my like faults is I do procrastinate some occasionally, and I definitely procrastinated on getting that book written. And then I had this, it was like, hey, I don't think I can do this book, like I'm too busy, my deadline's coming, like I'm not going to be able to finish it. And I was fine to just say, hey, this isn't going to work. And they were like, I was like, or I could make it into a Buxton cookbook, extend my deadline a little bit, give me some more time. And they were like, well, what if Buxton goes out of business like soon? And I was like, well, you're just gonna have to trust that it won't, I don't know. And they were like, okay, we'll make it a Buxton cookbook. And I said, okay. So we kind of switched a little bit from the like do it yourself. I was more of like an educational book from like the ground up, and I was like, I don't really feel comfortable with the where it's going. I'd rather be teaching to some folks that at least have a little bit of knowledge cooking. And then I had this vision of like, oh, I'll be by the fire shoveling coals, like writing this book, and it was like so hard. It was a lot of work and a lot of late nights trying to get it done at the end. But I'm super happy with it. I'm actually planning on doing another one eventually.
Oh yeah?
I had one pretty close in the works, and then COVID happened and like kind of screwed all that up. I definitely want to do like another cookbook. Probably start working on it once we get this place up and running more.
Cool.
I'm not going to do it during our opening, but once
Right.
it kind of mellows out a little bit, or we figure out what our daily norm is like, I would like to do another book. We sold a lot of them at Buxton, and I want to do that same thing here.
Sure.
We're going to sell that Buxton book here also.
Oh, cool.
The majority of the recipes and stories in that book are from this area. Chicken bog, catfish stew, and all of those are from memories of my Florence upbringing. So, and I've just got hundreds of recipes that I've done or in my brain that I want to get out into the world. So I think it will be a lot easier this time, just knowing what to expect and having some experience with it.
It seems like that's a thing. Like I always say, I notice it. I was prepping for this gig one time, and I was playing bass, and I usually didn't play bass. I would usually play drums or keys or something. And I was playing bass, I was music directing, and I was like, oh man, this first gig is going to be tough. And it kind of was, and it was also like a dream venue of mine to play. It was where I saw my first concert, and so I was like, oh shit. But then after that first one, it was fine. I was like, oh yeah, I'm good. It's fine. Sometimes I just need the first one. Even this podcast, I did the first one with a friend. I was like, oh, it's fine. There's something about when you do it for the first time, you know that you can do it.
Right.
Which kind of brings me to this cheat code I've been playing with lately, which is like, well, hold on. If I'm questioning my ability to do something, and then all I need is to do it, then I know I can do it, and then I'm good. What if I just cheat it and just say, I just know I can do it?
Right.
I'm sort of trying to do that more. It's not always, I'm not saying I'm an expert at it, but I'm trying to do that more. And it's cool to hear you say that you would like to write a book again. That must mean that there's something there that was good. I have an idea for a book that I'd like to do someday. I have no writing experience, but I like, whenever I do write things, I like it. It's fun. It's just creative. It's all It seems like it's all the same.
Yeah, I mean, I was a horrible student, so the thought of like writing a book was like, why do you want me to write a book? Like, what? I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, oh, you'll be fine. I was like, and I just need to hear that. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, definitely had some help with like editing and all of that. They're going to make sure that the words are spelled right. And the sentences are like
grammatically correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Hire a photographer to make the pictures look really good.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough, you can hire someone to test your recipes, you know.
Oh, cool.
I did not have that the first time around, but, you know, definitely writing a book can be super easy or super hard. And I'm a big, like, fan of faking it until you make it, you know. And I look at a lot of things that way. Like, you just got to dive in and
absolutely.
You're going to crash and burn or make it happen. And
sometimes it feels like if you take the mindset of acting like an expert, quote unquote, that like you'll find like, oh, it's working, I'm doing it. Right. You know. Yeah. I had a moment like that. It reminds me, I was this was probably a decade ago. I was recording in this dope ass studio where a lot of my like favorite records had been recorded by this producer that I was like really I admired a lot. And I remember going into it and being like, I can't do it. He's a great drummer. He's worked with all these other great drummers. I'm not like that. He's going to yank me off the kit and tell me that he's going to do it. I know it.
Right.
And I remember that as we were I was playing, he was giving me some notes. And then, you know, we went back to the beginning of the song after a few tries, and I noticed that he was stopping me more often and giving me more detailed notes and things. And I was like, all right, man, well, just let me know when you're ready to do it for real, and I will, you know, I'll make sure I tighten everything up. And he was like, you're doing it. We're already halfway through the take.
Oh, nice.
And I was just like, oh, like sometimes it's just like realizing that you're doing it
sure.
is the thing that you need to know. It's like, oh, it's already happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's tough to know that at the early part of the stage. It's like you were opening up this spot when you were making biscuits at Chick-fil-A.
Right.
In some way. Sure, it's all a part of the journey, you know?
It's all a part of the journey.
It feels like that. You seem to definitely... We've mentioned in this conversation, but even before that, I feel like I could see it, that you have a vision for where you're going. Does this vision... this like almost like ultimate goal or target, however you want to define it, does it kind of come all at once? Does it come in pieces? Is it fast? Is it slow? Am I asking a clear enough question there?
Comes in pieces, fast and slow, different times.
All of it?
Yeah, you know, some weeks seem really slow, some weeks seem really fast. Definitely back to what I was saying about being able to adapt and change, you know, I'm always like, well, this didn't work out here, we're going to put it here, and this is where it lives now, and it seems like that's where it was supposed to live the whole time.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm a professional of very much. I'm pretty good at some things, but I try to look at this project and most things I do of just like, hey, this is how I think it's going to be. It might have to be this way and be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Do you consider yourself a bit of like a generalist, a jack of all trades?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm the same. It feels good. Sometimes it gets a little bit of... It seems like certain people say that with a little bit of like derision, but I find that everything informs everything. Like, even this, like, I think I'm only able to do this because I spend so much time recording music. I'm not that concerned with a microphone because I've been around them a lot. It's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea of saying like, yeah, I'm gonna do like watercolor paintings, barbecue, and all this other stuff, it's like, yeah, that seems right.
Yeah, I enjoy having like way too many hobbies or interests. Can never have enough.
It feels to me like there's something about always having something fresh to put my perspective on when maybe if something gets a little tiring, but I even feel like one of the cool things about having lots of ideas, which I've heard you refer to a lot of this, is they're just ideas, it feels like, for the most part, is like some ideas like Buxton Hall might take a longer time to come into the physical world, but then you can pivot to this book idea or this painting idea And having lots of interest in lots of different areas of focus seems to open up the possibility for more and more ideas to take place. And it seems like it's more about just knowing when's the right time for what idea. So I like that you're so varied.
Yeah.
It feels right.
Well, thanks.
You mentioned earlier that you'll listen to customer input. Dude, the Taco Tuesdays have been great.
Oh, awesome.
Because I know for me, oftentimes, and I wouldn't think that like a guy building a, I think you're building a barbecue mecca. That's what it feels like is happening. I don't know if you would say it like that or what.
I mean, I hope it turns into that. Yeah,
it'd
be nice.
It feels inevitable to me. I don't want to gas you up too much or try to influence it, but it feels like that's what's going to happen. So the thought of doing a Taco Tuesday felt wild, but when we saw you were doing it, it's like, sure, yeah, let's go try it. Like, all the food's been great. And we instantly were like, oh, every Tuesday we're going to be here? Okay, cool. And it's nice because, generally I find sometimes my weekends are really relaxing, but sometimes I'm working. Like, sure. I was actually down in Beaufort, and I was going to ride up to Charleston to go to that barbecue festival. I just had too much work.
Sure.
And one thing I like about the Taco Tuesday thing is, like, even if I have a wild Monday and I'm playing catch up all day Tuesday, I can come and relax and have my Taco Tuesday.
Yeah, well, that's awesome.
You made this smoked al pastor that was wild. And I was thinking about it when you were talking about, like, being creative and not liking to stick to a certain recipe. And maybe doing something that's a little out of the box. And I think that I told you, I was like, you're a wild man. because like, I'd never had smoked al pastor. I never thought to have it. The closest I've got is, like, one time me and my buddy, his name's JJ. I don't know if you've met him yet. He's one of the new owners at Redbone.
I've heard of him. I may have crossed paths. Or
he's awesome.
I may have met him in the past. I have a hard time with names.
It's all good.
Faces.
Yeah, I'll introduce you. He's a good guy to know. But we would, like, smoke a Boston butt, and I think I took leftovers and, like, threw some pimento cheese on them and made tacos out of that. As close as I've got. But it was really great, and it did bring up this idea of, like, no one would. I'm not saying no one would put it in a cookbook, but it just felt very imaginative and creative. Are you often blending, say, things that you find out there and trying to bring it back into more quote-unquote your realm? Is that something you...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, al pastor is on the smoker right now for tomorrow. That's what we're smoking.
Well, that was going to be my customer input, so I'll have to tell my wife. She'll be very excited.
Yeah, so I feel like everything, not everything, but maybe almost everything could benefit from a little bit of smoke, and I have that machine, that tool. Not everybody can use a smoker to enhance their food flavor, and I could cook it in the oven and on the flat top, and it would probably taste really good, or I could put it on the smoker and, in my opinion, make it taste a little better. Also give that, like, uniqueness of, like, wow, I've never had a smoked al pastor taco. Why haven't you ever had a smoked al pastor taco? Why hasn't no one ever, like, why isn't this a thing? You know? That's where my brain starts to work, and
now it's your duty to make it happen.
It's a spit roasted stack of meat, that's cooked with fire. I have this fire. I don't have a cone, but maybe I can give it similar notes and flavors. And that's my Buxton brain really working. Like, hey, I have this here. I have to cook this.
Yeah.
Let's put it here because this is already on, producing smoke and flame. So, and there's a big, in Texas at least, the Hispanic culture, and there's a lot of, like, Mexican influence in Texas style barbecue right now.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's huge. A lot of,
I welcome that.
Yeah, a lot of tacos with smoked meats on it, and I also got inspiration from seeing all my friends out in Texas making tacos.
Oh, cool.
smoking meat that wouldn't typically be smoked on a smoker, maybe, or definitely got that inspiration from my friends out in Texas. And I worked with a kid from Mexico City who gave me his recipe for al pastor at the Admiral way back in my early Asheville days.
Yeah.
So then to back it up even further, when I was working at the Wig in Columbia in 2005, we started a Taco Tuesday there. And it was just ground beef tacos, hard shell, and black bean tacos. And it was a very huge success. It would really nutty, like really busy. People would come and get 20 tacos.
Dude, yeah.
They were 50 cent back then, We could still make a little bit of money off of 50 cent tacos.
Wow.
But it was more about just bringing people out on a day that Tuesdays aren't not a lot going on. We had been closed here pretty much all summer on Tuesday while we got some of the construction done.
Right.
A lot of that has happened, or we're in a pause of where we don't need to be closed Monday and Tuesday. So it was kind of always my thought to open back up on Tuesday and give somebody something just a little bit different. The crazy world we live in, things being so expensive, and try to, I don't want to be. Sometimes we got labeled as the expensive barbecue place in Asheville.
Oh, Buxton Hall, really?
Yeah, and we were using.
I felt like it was very favorable.
Well, we were using pasture-raised hogs, and all of the meats we bought were cost us a premium.
Absolutely.
So we had to pass that along to the customer in little ways. And the people that want a $5 barbecue sandwich, they were like, why does this barbecue cost so much? They don't care that we got our hogs from down the street, and they're not farm raised, or they're not factory raised. They're raised on a farm. And all of my, every penny that we spend on hogs are going to this one family, and that makes me feel good.
Absolutely.
As sending this money to a big, Cisco or U.S. Foods. It was nice to know that our money was going down the street, keeping it local, and that was a big part of our what we did at Buxton.
Yeah. I was going to ask about that, and that answers that. Is the idea of
you're having hey, you can come and get a $2 taco.
It's wild.
It's let's
in 2024, by the way, just for future posterity. Yeah,
we'll see how long we can keep that. I would love to. Hey, this is the one night you can come spend a few dollars with us and get out of your house and not cook. And it's less for me about trying to make that money and just getting people out and giving them something to do. And if you want to buy a beer while you're here, that's great.
Sure.
Too,
well, it's greatly appreciated. That's legitimately we walked in and $2. I almost felt I'm are y'all okay back there? But it feels good to be able to. When we came back the second time, my wife was 10 al pastors. We were at this point, it's wow, let's go in. And I don't know, man. I will say that from my side as a customer, it's nice when you find those deals.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to eat food that's good, accessible price-wise, and also good for you and makes you feel good, which goes back to the ingredients and where you're getting those from and what's pumped in them and what's not. And I definitely, when I'm eating those al pastor tacos or really anything you're making, it feels good. I don't go home and go, ugh. It tastes good, it feels good, I don't know, it's checking all the boxes for me.
Well, thanks, that's great to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And the al pastor, man, again, I'm excited. It's the smoke, and then the acidity when you can put that lime on it. When it comes to cooking, be it smoking or if you're back there getting the tortillas warm for the tacos, is there a feeling involved? Is there a way that it feels that is right, or is there something you're tapping into just on almost a, not emotional, but just maybe it's a physical feeling in the body? I don't know.
Yeah, definitely that has some stuff to do with it. When it's not stressful, it feels good. When it's super stressful, it doesn't feel so good, but also still feels good, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The stress helps drive it, but
sure.
Yeah, definitely feels, there's a feeling to it. And when it's clicking for sure.
Yeah. it's cool. We talked about riding the wave earlier. Even when things are going wrong, there is something to that. It's like, ooh, a challenge. Like when Pro Tools just crashed and we go to restart the recording and the sun has moved and now it's gotten dark and we got to fix that, but it's fine. It's all good.
Yeah.
There's something about that when these challenges come up in the midst of the thing that we love to do, sometimes it's the challenges of the tough part that is the most memorable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you know, coming up with solutions to these things feels like there's something just satisfying about it. Like when I have to come and chop this up and edit it and try to make that smooth, like it's gonna be a challenge, but it's gonna be fun. And I wouldn't have gotten that without this thing going wrong or that thing going wrong. So in the food industry, is the anxiety side, the rush side, is it from just being busy or someone called out? Like, what are the things that you run into on a daily basis in a kitchen that's a challenge that people like me who've never worked in food don't know about?
Yeah, somebody doesn't show up, or they walk out in the middle of service, or the product that you were supposed to get on the truck doesn't show up.
Right.
And then places like Florence, you're not going to find what you need because the resources aren't here,
Sure.
like maybe they were in Asheville, or the wood guy doesn't show up with your wood, or the fryer goes out, or there's a water boil advisory, or you know,
Right.
there's constantly things being thrown at you, especially in the restaurant world. A VIP or somebody special comes in, and they're also there at a time where the whole restaurant's full, and you don't have that extra minute to like go make sure that they're okay or their food is absolutely perfect, or you know, there's always tons of variables and things that make the anxiety and stress come and go in waves.
Now, to navigate that, are there things that you aim to do before getting to work? Like, do you have a morning routine or just any kind of practice that you do maybe daily that puts you in the kind of head state that allows you to deal with those things better?
It would be awesome to say I do have a daily routine, but it often gets interrupted, and those are to like probably add to the stress more.
Sure.
If I was like, I do this every single morning, I have to do this to make my day go well. Then if something happens like, oh, somebody just called out, they need you to come in, and I don't get that daily routine, then I'm screwed. So I think that's probably why I have so many interests and passions, or like, hey, I need some alone time today. If I don't get it in the middle of the day or the beginning of the day, then I'll find some time. When I do, or when I am able to find my alone time, my zen chill time, is when I am at the best, but that very rarely happens on a regular basis, you know. In the summertime, when I can go swimming and get some rollerblading in and come to work and get a full day's in, that's when I'm probably at my best, but that doesn't happen all the time.
It seems like it's about that balance of like solitude and then being able to go out and do your thing. And I think of it even because I try to keep a morning routine. So it's more like I've been switching over, trying to think of it more as a morning practice, because it's like I'm practicing for when the shit hits the fan is what it feels like, you know? And you bring up a good point about like, well, what if I don't get it, but I need it, so now is my whole day going to be messed up because I didn't do this thing that I do every day? But it's almost kind of like the way I'm trying to approach it is I do it for practice, and if I can't do it, that's why I've been practicing. So I don't beat myself up. Like I try to start every day with a 30-minute walk, and some days that's just not possible for whatever reason. And it used to be when that happened, I would go, oh no, my whole day is going to be shit. But now I try to go, nah, this is why I do it. And so now that, you know, a few weeks ago it was like I got sick with a gnarly sinus infection and have to go straight to the doctor because I only have one time and it's right now. Like, well, go to the doctor and do the other stuff later. So,
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I take a shower every morning. That's about as
there you go
as it gets.
But that's something.
Yeah.
Like it's something that
a little bit of alone time in the shower.
And I find it to be regulating. Like when I'm taking like a nice warm shower, it feels good. But the solitude seems to be an important thing. Like it feels like a lot of people say like introvert, extrovert, and I get that. Mm-hmm. But I can't really call it which one I am. It's like I feel like I need my alone time. Mm-hmm. I start every day, if I can, with an hour of alone time. And then I seem to do better when I'm around other people.
Yeah.
And it feels like I need both.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, I would say I'm definitely an introvert by nature, and I've picked a extrovert profession where I have to talk to people all day long and entertain people or direct people in ways, and
talk to strangers
where I
on
naturally
podcasts.
Just want to be in the corner all by myself, staring at a comic book or something.
Yeah, but does that seem in a way like maybe you're getting the thing you need to draw you out of that? Like if maybe, and I don't think any of us can know, but like if a good balance of the solitude and the community is like what's required to live a fulfilling life, it almost feels like life gave you the thing maybe you needed, which was I don't know, it's just a theory I'm coming up with. I'm
sure I would miss the socializing and the experiences if I never had them again, the introvert life would get pretty lonely and boring after a while,
I lean more towards wanting, because I love collaboration. Mm-hmm. And so I lean more towards wanting to work with others, but in the season I'm in right now, it's very much one of the building phase. I'm building my Buxton Hall, I'm building my Elliott's, and it has me alone a lot more. Mm-hmm. But I have found that even though I don't like that, I'd prefer to be in community with other creatives, that it has been integral to my growth. Like it's like, hey man, you need this time alone. My mentor calls it like in the garden, like you need the time in the garden alone in order to sort of take things up a level.
Oh, yeah.
And
absolutely.
so like it seems like whatever our disposition is, if we're, for me at least, going down the path of this, like whatever your vision for your life is, it's like it gives you the thing you need, even if it's not exactly what you want.
Yeah.
But it gives you what you ultimately want.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope. It's working for you, so I'll see if it'll work for me. But
yeah.
But man, you've done a great job.
Well, thank you.
We're glad to have you here, just because, I mean, literally, I remember one week we went up to Louisville, Kentucky, because I'm into whiskey. It's one of those passions that you and I are talking about. One of my passions is whiskey. And we spent the whole week up in Louisville, just hitting distilleries, hanging out with friends, drinking whiskey, doing that. And we were driving back, and it's like, are we going to pull into Asheville just to go to Buxton Hall? It's like, yeah, we are. And
awesome.
So, like, imagine my surprise when one day it's like, you're here doing this. It's 5 minutes from our place.
Oh, well, I'm happy that you're excited about it. I hope we can deliver on the excitement for you with what we do here.
I think you will. I think it's just a matter of time before this is a barbecue mecca.
Yeah, well, I hope so.
Cool, man. That was my conversation with Elliott Moss, a pitmaster, a creative. You can find out what he's up to on Instagram at Elliott Moss, or check out his new restaurant at Elliott's Florence. The show's theme, production, mixing, editing, hosting by me, Tyler Bodkins. You can find out what I'm up to at tylerbodkins.com. Come say hey. Logo design by Tamara Lavalla. Find out what she's up to at tamaralavalla.com. And remember, in a world where it's easier to see what's missing or what's broken, let's create.